Okay, next up we have Damon Poole, who comes with us, or come to us from the Atlassian group. Vast amount of experience in the Agile world, particularly within enterprises, so he's got lots of good stuff to share with us. Once again, let me remind people, try to sit towards the middle. We're going to have people probably coming in a little bit late, trying to squeeze into the empty spots. So with that, go ahead.
All right, thanks very much. So how many people here are part of a massive team? All right. Well, how many people here would like to be part of a massive team? Would like their company to grow, make more money, higher salaries? Okay, now we're talking. All right. So we're going to talk about enterprise agility and what that means. So obvious reference there. So a little bit about myself. I'm the Chief Agilist at the Atlassian group. It's interesting, while I'm here at Atlassian, I keep having a hard time saying Eliason because my brain is thinking Atlassian, but so I'm with Eliason. So primarily what I do is coaching, training, and create our program for coaching and training. As Ken said, I've spent a lot of time in the Agile space and in the software industry as well. So a whole bunch of stuff up there. You can read it. But here's what we're going to talk about. First off, diluted Agile. So there's Agile, and then there's diluted Agile. What is that? Some of the things in here you'll have to sell to somebody, often upper management. Right? So upper management wants the benefits of Agile, but don't necessarily want to pay for it. So I'm going to give you a little meat there to sell. And then really the idea of enterprise agility goes across the entire enterprise, but it starts with the teams. Then you've got multiple teams working together. And then you've got everybody outside of the team. Right? So if Agile was just typing faster, it wouldn't matter. But, and actually, apparently some people think it is typing faster. So, oh, we're going to do quarterly releases now. A full year of scope in 1 quarter. Yes. No, that's not it. We're going to talk about creating a purpose-built organization. Right now, the organization you're in, unless it's brand new, who's working for an organization that's been around for longer than 2 years? Yeah, okay, good. So most of those organizations are probably purpose-built for traditional development, right? Not purpose-built for Agile. And that's a bit of a problem. We're going to talk about tooling, which is great at a tool summit. It's interesting, a little interference over there. I guess I'll have just to out-talk him. Then we're going to also talk about, now, how many people have implemented amazing Agile in just a few short weeks? Really? We're going to talk later. Amazing Agile, right there. Amazing Agile in a few short weeks. How many teams? 5 teams. All right. Well, don't listen to me then. Listen to her. That's pretty good. So what I was going to say is it can take years. Now I'm a little embarrassed. So how do you approach that transformation process? You can't, you know, unless you're her, apparently. You don't just snap your fingers in your Agile. So we'll talk about that. And then, hey, it's Monday morning, and you're like, there was this guy at this conference. What are some next steps that you can take? OK. So Agile dilution. This is an 18-month time frame we're looking at here. Now, you might say, it doesn't take us 18 months to get something into production. I understand that. But how long ago did that idea start? How many times have you said, finally, after 3 years, we're going to do that project? So 18 months might be a short period of time. So I'm talking about from the time somebody has a business idea till the time it's in production, how long is that? It's probably a while. So then you say, OK, we want to go Agile. We got our Agile teams. There's 30 people on this program. That's one big team, right? No, it's going to be multiple teams, 3, 4 teams. Let's say it's 3. So I got 3 teams working together for some purpose. And what do I have in Agile that allows me to synchronize those teams together? I have what? Anything. Name me a practice from Agile that allows me to synchronize. Scrum of Scrums. Excellent. The #1 answer. What's the #2 answer? That's right. There isn't one. Excellent. And actually, Scrum of Scrums does not come from Scrum. It comes from the Agile community, right? Coaches, books, et cetera. It's something that comes from the community. Well, oh well, nobody heard about that. So we're going to do traditional project management because we're working on our individual components and then we'll integrate them together in 3 to 6 months using traditional methods. Oh, right? So that's interesting. So now we sort of hamstring, because if in 3 months it's all going to work together, then the stuff that you're working on better be not changing for that time either, right? Well, we got some other issues. You're not telling me you're not going to do requirements gathering for this Agile stuff, right? You're not going to start working on whatever. So you're going to do requirements gathering, right? You're going to do Agile during the development, because it is called Agile development or extreme programming, right? Then we're going to do estimation, because you're not going to spend my $5 million unless I have estimates, right? And then you better do design, because this is a real project. We're not doing that emergent design, incremental architecture stuff. This is real work we're doing here. So then we'll do that stuff you want to do. Now, we're going to test. You're not going to test stuff until it's ready to test, right? So we'll have testing come at the end, and then we'll do user acceptance testing, and then we'll put it into deployment. And deployment at our shop only takes like a month or so, really quick. So let me ask you this. A little auction here. I'm going to do an auction. Who will give me that doing Agile in this environment, will give me 5% of the possible benefits of Agile? Who'll give me 5%? At least 5%. At least, no, nobody. All right, well, OK, so great. So that's part of the problem here, right? So if you're trying to do Agile within an enterprise, this is some of the stuff that you're going to be running into. All right. Oh, it gets worse. So I had somebody almost had a heart attack when I pointed this out. They said, oh, I thought you were talking about all that stuff from the IT perspective. You mean business is involved? Right? So actually, Agile touches everything. And if it doesn't touch everything, it's going to be diluted. And you all, by not raising your hands, either showed that you don't get enough exercise or agreed that the effectiveness of Agile within this environment is going to be very, very low. OK. So what can we do? Yay, off-the-shelf solutions. Yes. So there's a couple that are out there. There's Scaled Agile Framework, and there's actually a presentation on this in this very room tomorrow at, I think, 2 o'clock. And then there's Enterprise Agility, which I'm going to be talking about. That looks like a framework because it has a pretty picture, but it's not really a framework. There's the FW1 and FW2, very creatively named. They're short for Framework 1 and Framework 2. There's Enterprise Scrum, and then my favorite, Roll Your Own, because then you pay me to roll your own. I like that one. But we're going to talk about Enterprise Agility. So this is what Enterprise Agility looks like, right? You've got stuff coming in from, I don't know if this doesn't have a laser on it, but from the customers very quickly within a program. You assign it to a team. The team works on it. They get it done really quickly. They integrate across the whole product line, because continuous integration doesn't mean you integrate continuously once a month. It means continuously across the whole program, right? You integrate it. You may have multiple things because you have a similar infrastructure for releasing and deployment. You deploy with one click. I saw some cool things in the keynote earlier today. So you just click on that button from Atlassian, and out you go. You measure your cycle time, and you want it to go this quickly. And actually, some people do release hundreds of times a day these days, like on purpose. This is what you want to look like. Now, a lot of companies, and I run into this all the time, it's hard to break through. People will say, well, I'm Agile already. Well, what do you mean? We release like this all the time. Yeah, but do you do it on purpose? Oh, well, no. So, nimble is not Agile. That's what you want. So now, here's the money. Here's why you would want to do it from a financial perspective. How many people think, no, again, an auction. If your organization goes Agile, how much more money will you have in the bank? What? Give me a number. $100? Who'll give me 1,000? 1,000 bucks? You won't give me 1,000 bucks? Why are you here? More? No, I mean at least. Who'll give me at least 1,000 bucks? All right, you can write it out in my name there. right? If it's not going to make you a couple $100,000 a year to go Agile, why would you do it? Why? Why? I can't think of a good reason. Because it's more fun, it's more enjoyable, all that. Yeah, that's great. I know a great way to have a lot of fun, a year of vacation every year. Right? That's the best thing. It's got to be about finances to some degree, right? So my belief is that it's tens of millions of dollars, if not hundreds, for your organization. That's why you should go Agile, and it won't work if you just do it right. Nobody would give me 5% of the benefit. 5% of $1 million is not a lot of money, right? It's not easy to do. It's not easy to do. It will cost you money, but you will make a lot. Now, you might be thinking, oh, wow, who is this guy? Like an extreme capitalist? If your organization makes more money, you're going to have more vacation, get better benefits, be promoted more likely, right? So it's good for you. Plus, if the business understands that they're going to make more money, you're more likely to do good Agile, as opposed to an hour stand-up every day. That's Scrum. That's Agile. That's not Scrum, and that's not Agile, right? But that's what some of the perspective is on what Agile is. So you got a project. Who's heard of minimum viable product? OK. So I like to use minimum viable increment because minimum viable product is associated with buggy products, and I don't like that. Lean startups is fantastic, but don't like the buggy part. So minimum viable increment as well, because you're going to produce multiple increments of your product over time. If you break up your project that you said, now how much money did you say you're going to make or save? Let's say you say it's $100,000 a month that you're going to make or save, whatever the number is, when you release it. So in 3 months, $300,000. Use your own money, your own values here. Whatever that project was, if you break it up into pieces, minimum viable increments, and you release early, you can make that money earlier. You might also realize that that third increment is junk. Like, where did this stuff come from? Don't do it. Don't ship the junk. Ship the valuable stuff. So using this simple example, if you do it that way, an extra $450,000, right, with just a very small example. That's a lot of money. So you can say to folks, look, if we go Agile, minimum viable increment, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Right? That's pretty convincing. But it gets better. How many people work on multiple projects simultaneously? Yes, you can all raise your arms. That's great. Right? Almost everybody. So I talked to one company. They said they had 140 projects running simultaneously. I said, oh, that's great, 140. If you fully staffed each of those projects, how many people would that be per project? And they said, well, 20. So you do the math there, 140 times 20. And I said, how many people you got? And they said, oh, about 200. So it looks like I have 60 people here. Actually, I have 20 people. Oh, and then projects, you know, they fail or they get shelved, which is code for canceled, but we don't want to admit it yet, right? So actually, if you've only got 20 people for your 6 projects, then make 2 teams and do the 2 projects, then the next 2 projects, and then the next 2 projects. Now, why wouldn't you just do this naturally? Because you got a couple of people screaming at you, knowing that if you're not working on those projects, it'll probably never happen. That's not a good reason, right? People do it. It's a vicious cycle, right? People do it because they know it's the only thing that works, so they keep doing it. Got to stop doing it because it's worth a lot of money. In this example, $3.6 million if you do this thing called prioritization. Right? We all know it's important to prioritize, but this is why it's important to prioritize. This is a tiny little example with a couple of teams and a small amount of money per month. $3.6 million, that's pretty convincing, I think. OK, so all right, so you convinced me we want to do enterprise agility. Where do we start? We start with a team. And a great way to start with a team is Scrum. Now, Scrum is a very malleable interface. We can do pieces of it and still get all the benefits, right? I don't think so. Now, you might say, well, this guy's a purist. You know, you're probably saying you could have co-located teams and all that kind of stuff. Well, so you want to get from here to Boston. Well, maybe you don't, but I would like to eventually, because that's where I live. And you want to do it for $400 or less in about 6 hours or less. What are all the ways you can do it? There's just one. If you want that benefit, it's flying. If you want the benefit of Scrum, there's one and only one way to do it. Scrum. If you pull out pieces of Scrum, you'll get some benefits. But if you pull out some of these, what do you get? Right? Bad things happen. If you don't have more lift than weight, you might have a very interesting vehicle, but it's certainly not a plane, and you're not going to get to Boston in 6 hours. Same thing with Scrum. We're not doing Scrum because it's fun or it's interesting or to pad our resume. It's because we want to make a lot more money. And if you want to do that, you've got to really do it. Same as with the plane. Now, there are some things that you can get benefit out of whether you're doing all of Scrum or not, right? Having a backlog is fantastic. Do a backlog with traditional requirements. That's great, right? Have a small cross-functional team. But if you want to get the full benefit, you need to do almost all of the practices. So that's a good place to start. Really, to have Scrum working well, you have a team, you have agreements in place, and some of those agreements are things like definition of done, definition of ready, things that you've probably heard of, you may be doing or you may not be doing, but they're very easy to do. Some of these are easier than others. One that's really hard to do, and it's my favorite, it's why you guys all raised your hands earlier about how many projects you're working on. Hey folks, I talked to senior leaders, I asked them, raise your hand if you agree with me that you want to do this immediately, and nobody ever raises their hands. Every person is on one and only one team. That team works from one and only one backlog with one and only one product owner managing that backlog. Who's with me? Yeah, you guys are, I understand that, thank you. Most people are not. I can't do that in my organization, are you crazy? Well, that's fine. You don't have to get the money either, that's fine with me. But if you want to get the big value of Agile, these are the kinds of things that you need to do. And I understand it's hard. Nobody ever said it was easy. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it today. So get the cross-functional team, time box, single backlog. That's how it works. Other things, user stories are incredibly important. Now, taking a document that's this thick and calling it a user story because it says as a, I want, so that, does not make it a user story. Right? It's not just a new way to use words. It has to have a who it's for, a what it is, which we're really good at, and a why are we doing it. If you don't know who it's for or why you're doing it, then why are you doing it? Right? It's not going to turn out well. And if it's 20 pages, it probably should be 20 stories or more. So well-defined who, what, and why, a good definition of ready and done, meeting the invest criteria, having acceptance criteria. If it's like a good rule of thumb is if it's more than 3 points and you're using real relative value, relative sizing, it's probably splittable. So split it. Vertical slices. OK, I got a new product. It's the back end of Twitter. Who wants to buy that? Why not? It's just the back end, and, right? So vertical slices is the idea that there is no value in just a layer. There's no value. You need to have something that is the entire slice that has value, something that you can add in and somebody will immediately say, I want that, I can use that today, and I might even pay you for it. That's a vertical slice. TDD, I don't want to do TDD. It's not a good thing to say, right? Who thinks it's a bad idea to write unit tests and is willing to raise their hand in the room? Right? If you're going to write unit tests, it's harder to write them after you've got the code. It is. Write them ahead of time. That's all for TDD. There's a lot more to it, but just do it. Automated testing, enough said. Right? Product owner, OnePiece Flow, I'll get into a little bit more detail. So use a card wall. Right? So if you're looking at a card wall in the stand-up, and it's the last day of your iteration, and you got no stories in done, and a whole bunch in testing, and a whole bunch in coding, you're in trouble. Why wait until the end to see that? Use a card wall, whether it's physical or electronic, right? So you can use Jira Agile. I almost used the old name. Use Jira Agile, and you got yourself a great electronic card wall. Work in progress limits. Now, engineers all know that it's more efficient to work on as many stories at the same time as I possibly can. But then QA folks will say, you know, I don't know how this ever worked. And then you fix it and you realize all that code I wrote was based on a wrong assumption. Now I got to rewrite it. So do a small piece, get it to work. If you can't even get that to work, why are you working on anything else? So work on as few things as possible at a time. I think a really great analogy for this is patches and hotfixes. Now I won't have, maybe you need the exercise. How many people do patches and hotfixes? Right? You don't really need, okay, you don't really need the exercise there. Everybody, what gets in the way of a hotfix or a patch? Anybody, what gets in the way? Okay, process gets in the way. Yes, okay. The correct answer that, you made it inconvenient for me there. The answer I was looking for, the correct answer in the script here is nothing. Nothing gets in the way. Oh, I'm on vacation. Oh, somebody's on lunch. No, it gets out there. Why does it get out there? Because it is the most important value for your organization to be working on it right now and to have nothing in the way and to get it out there fast. If that's what you do with things that are important, then are you saying that everything else you do is not important? I think it is important. Everything that you do should be done as though it was a hotfix or a patch. Everything. Now you might think, okay, I'm going to create Frankenstein. I'm not saying that. That's a longer conversation. But if you can't do almost everything as though it was a hotfix or a patch, you should look into that. Right? Because that's what you do when it's really important. And I think everything you do is important. Another way to look at this is the concept of OnePiece Flow or small batch size that comes from Kanban and Lean, or Lean and Kanban. So the idea is, right, for anything that I need to do, I have to do design, I have to do coding, I have to integrate, I have to test, I have to document it. We want to do all of that as fast as we possibly can on as small a thing as we possibly can and work on as few things as we possibly can so that we're always going from done to done to done to done all the way through the iteration so we don't have the poor QA folks shoved up at the end of the iteration saying, hey, what about us? Solution, we'll do testing in the next iteration. No. No. Shippable every iteration. All right. So that's easy at the team. I could have been talking about pure vanilla Scrum at this point. What about multiple teams working together? We got Scrum of Scrums. Thank you very much. I'll give you your $10 later. There are other things. Scrum of Scrums is good. Retrospectives is good. But one of the most important things you need is these teams need to be synced up on when are they starting iterations and when are they ending. So we can release at the same time, so we can do retrospectives at the same time. It's very important. Now, if you're doing Kanban, right, you're automatically synced up, unless you're doing waterfall and you just call it Kanban, right, which people do. So the important thing is you want to have those sync points no more than every 4 weeks for the exact same reason that 4-week iteration is a good size maximum, right? You don't want to go to 5 weeks. That's crazy. All right. So you can have 3-week iterations, but if you have a 3-week and a 4-week, how often do you synchronize? Simple math, every 12, right? So it doesn't mean that everybody has to be at 2 weeks, as some folks would suggest. It's just that they're synchronized at least every 4 weeks. So everybody at 4, that's fine. Some at 2, some at 1, some at 4, that's fine. Some using Kanban, that's fine. But with the same start and end dates. Managers love to end on what is it, Monday. Yeah. We'll start on Tuesday, end on Monday, and then you've got the whole weekend. No, I don't suggest that. I was kidding. I thought it was funnier to me, I guess. OK, so you want to synchronize common start and end so that everybody's synchronized every 4 weeks at a minimum. All right, so that's an important thing. And then this is your typical Scrum setup. Daily stand-ups. How many people do weekly backlog grooming? How many people think they should be doing weekly backlog grooming? All right, you can work on that. Right, so if you're doing weekly backlog grooming, you actually don't need iteration planning anymore. They're the same thing, or they should be. Right, so weekly backlog grooming, fantastic way to synchronize. If you've got multiple teams that are doing weekly backlog grooming, you look at that story, you're like, we were going to do that at the next iteration, but it depends on another team. Good, now you know. So a lot of people, as you can see, are already doing that. It's good for synchronization. Multiple teams, Scrum of Scrums, right? Stand-up of stand-ups, retro of retros. If a stand-up is a good idea, a retro of retros is a good idea for all of the exact same reasons. Right? So if I send representatives to my retro of retros and we're all down, we're all having the same exact problem, now we have more leverage to say we need to fix that problem. Full product review. So my team, everything's working, all our components work, and we're really happy with our UI. And then it comes to integration, and I guess we missed the memo on the common look and feel guidelines. And everybody's looking at us during the full product review. Okay, so that's a good thing to do. You should be reviewing the entire product every iteration, not just before release. You're out of time at that point. You want to be doing this all the time. So do your iteration review for the team, then do the multi-team full product review. And you might say, I can't stand up the product every iteration. Do you know what that takes? I don't know what it takes, but that's your issue, right? That's something you want to work on. That's why Agile is hard. We're not looking for ways to work around things. If you've got a problem like that, you need to solve it. Full product review. So then we're going to do our team retrospectives, our retro of retros, right? These are some of the ways that you can synchronize that, take the idea of stand-ups and go to the next step. So what about the organization? We've talked about the team level. Woohoo, that's all we got to do. Scrum, we're done. Yay. Is there anybody here that was working on a Scrum team until the rest of the organization found out what you're doing and stomped on it? Anybody like that? You don't want to mention? Well, it does happen. But anyway, you can be somewhat successful here at the team level. We've talked about that. You've got the multi-team. But then you have the organization at large. Right? The organization often has been purpose-built for traditional development. How many people have yearly budget cycles? Okay, who has incremental budgeting or financing? Anybody? Oh, that was the better question to answer. That was a better question to ask. Right? Nobody. Right? So these are the things that actually get in the way. If once a year you're making promises about what you're going to deliver, then how do you change what you're going to deliver? Right? And then if you can't change what you're going to deliver, how do you get the benefits of Agile? It's hard. So how your organization is structured, how you manage people, how you compensate people. I know organizations that basically are compensated because all the developers are stack ranked, and the bottom 10% are gone every year. Yep. How much motivation do you have to work as a team in that environment? None. Right? Because if I'm helping you, I'm not helping me, and I might be in that bottom 10%. Compensation is important. How you measure things. If you're measured in QA by how many bugs you found, then how much motivation do you have to get a user story to done? Well, I found my bugs. I don't know about this user story thing. Right? I got my quota to meet. Right? So how things are measured are important. Tools and technology are very important, right? So how many people would rather use, oh gosh, there may be vendors in the audience I don't want to offend, so I won't go there. But how many people use tools that were created more than 20 years ago? Okay, some of you know who I'm talking about, right? How easy is it to do Agile with those tools? It's okay, right? But those tools are not supporting Agile because they have no idea what Agile is, right? So we saw in the keynote today all the things that Atlassian is doing to make Agile easier, right? To guide you down that path, to make it the slippery slope. That's a good thing. All right, so this is my top 10 headwinds and tailwinds. Things that help traditional development, but make it difficult to be Agile. Right? So they're seen as good things from a traditional perspective, but they don't help Agile. They're not doing Agile any favors. These are the kinds of things that you need to switch to support an Agile ecosystem. Tooling. All right. So for some reason, today in 2013, and it is 2013, we still do a lot of stuff manually. I don't really understand why. Now, if you're doing manual testing or exploratory testing, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, right? A very important part of that process is, what am I going to test? That is the creative part. Typing and looking at results with your eyeballs has nothing to do with creativity whatsoever. And what we do is a creative endeavor. We are creative folks. You are creating things that have never been done before. You are not putting out widgets, right? So it is important to maximize the creativity and minimize the things that could be automated. Anything that could be automated should be automated. There is no good reason to not automate things. None. This is how it looks, right? Those are documents that are being passed from person to person. Don't forget this document. Don't forget that document. Right, so a good point in the keynote today was using Word for requirements as opposed to something like the Atlassian tool suite that's all linked together. Right? That is also part of automation. Editing a Word document with stuff that a tool like Atlassian could do makes no sense. Right? So this is what you want. A nice cross-functional team focusing on the creative aspects, and anything that could be automated, automated. Right? So to have a creative person typing, doing something manual, is a waste of their time and a waste of the organization's money. Here are all kinds of great products that you can use. Right? Very reasonable. Right? We're not talking about a huge investment here. It makes sense to do it. OK. So transforming an organization to support Agile, changing compensation, changing hiring practices, changing away from silo development, all that kind of stuff, not easy. Doesn't happen overnight. Right? So how do you get from here to there? Well, hey, you got work that needs to be done, people that need to do it, and you got to prioritize, what are you going to do first? Sounds like an Agile project. Let's run the transformation project as an Agile project. Let's do the simplest thing that could possibly work. One of my all-time favorite examples of an Agile transformation was the first stage gate that they had to get through, and I emphasize the word stage gate, was to have the logo for the Agile transformation team. And they hit that milestone, in 3 months. Yes! I kid you not. And anything that you're going to be doing, you should measure against the Agile Manifesto, right? Because if you believe in Agile, you're really believing in the Agile Manifesto. So big upfront design for how to go Agile doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So the same thing with incremental architecture. You're architecting a new organization, same thing. You can use emergent design there. So one of the materials that you're going to get that'll be up on the website, and there's a URL coming later, will be the Agile Maturity Matrix. It's a spreadsheet. It's got all these indicators in it. Actually, the slides say 44. It's 50 now. These are all things that you can use to see where are we on our Agile journey. Right? There's a bunch of these out there, but this is one that we have. You can have it for free. The basic structure is it goes from 0 to 4. 0 is it's holding you back. You've got your foot on the brake. 4 is you should be at a conference talking about it. Right? So one of my favorite examples is stand-ups. So if you have a stand-up where people walk in and they go, you're the Scrum Master, and say, hey, I finished this, I'll talk to you later, and walking out, that's not a stand-up meeting. Right? Those folks think it's for the project manager, Scrum Master. It's not for them. Right? So if you're not doing it, that's a 0. If you're doing something more like what I was saying, that's like a 1. You're sort of in transition. 2 is we've decided not to do Agile anymore, and people are still going to the stand-ups because they believe in it, they see the value. That's sustainable. Once you're at sustainable, you can move off and go do something else. Let's get better at retrospectives. Let's get better at TDD. Right? Because you want to get as many of these things to sustainable as you possibly can so that it's sustainable. Right? So the things to the right, those are great, but let's leave that till later. So there's a whole bunch of these. They cover organizational support. How is the organization structured for Agile? How are the team dynamics? Right? Are you forming, storming, norming, performing? Most folks that are in the environment where you raise your hand to the question, I'm working on multiple projects, you're not on a real team. It's like, what's a local sports team here? Giants? What? Who? Niners. Niners. All right, so the Niners, your new Niners team, they play for 3 different cities, and it's a different group of individuals every game. Go Niners. Right, that's crazy, but that's what we do in software and IT. Right, so what are your team dynamics like? How is it structured? Product, are you using invest or not? Vertical slices or not? If you got a who, what, and why on your user stories, things like that. Process mechanics. Process mechanics is what we typically look at. Yes, I'm doing a stand-up and I'm doing a retrospective. Go away. Yeah, so in those environments, what I typically see is what I call on-the-wall waterfall. So one engagement, I went in and I looked at they had a card wall and they had user stories. And I got a little closer and I looked at it and it said, January 1st, requirements analysis begins. February 1st, design starts. But that's not a user story. So they had a card wall and they had stand-ups and all that. No Agile happening whatsoever. None, right? So those are the things we typically look at, but all of these things are important to see if you're really doing Agile. Engineering practices, things like TDD, continuous integration. Have you got Bamboo installed? Does it run more than once a month? Right? Things like that. And by the way, those chuckles mean, yeah, I've seen that in my environment, right? Set a goal. Where are you hoping to go? Set a goal, get folks to agree to it, and in your retrospectives, you can refer to these things and say, hey, we didn't meet that goal. How come? You can do a fancy radar chart. So in summary, you've got the overall model. That's the picture. There's a guide which you can have. It's only just 1,000 pages, I think. 10 pages, right? It's like the Scrum guide. It's just 10 pages. And it doesn't tell you prescriptively what to do. It says these are the things that have been shown to work. And then the maturity matrix tool, which we were just talking about. So what can you do Monday morning? Download the materials. There's the website right there. And that's pretty standard. I think all the materials for all of the presentations will be there. Share it with your team or your organization. You could say, hey, this maturity matrix tool looks pretty cool. How are we doing? What do we want to do for Agile? Oh, that's all you want to do? That's interesting. So as you list them out and have the conversations, you realize not everybody is as on board as you are, or maybe they're more on board than you are. Right? So you can get a shared understanding. And then your team, or as the team, or as the leadership, you can go and do some, I don't like the word assessment. That sounds like we're going to judge you or something. It's really just a way to see where you are and where you want to be. And then discuss the results. Consider improvements. OK. I think we have about 4 minutes for questions. First off, I just want to thank you for coming. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much, Damon. As you mentioned, yes, everything will be on the archives. I don't know if I can commit to Monday, but we will get everything up, including, actually, I saw a ton of people taking pictures of the slides, which is kudos to you for making good slides. But the whole deck, the video recording, everything will be available, as well as the guide, the printout that we gave you guys in the middle of the session, all that stuff will be available. We're even trying to tinker around with Jira project export that allows you to track all your agility statuses that he was showing earlier. So we're pretty close to having that probably by next week as well. Questions? We got a few more minutes. There's a break coming up next, so we can take the questions and spill over a little bit if we have to.
What advice would you give a team if upper management, meaning executives and my directors and VPs, have no respect for Agile?
OK, so in case you didn't hear the question, what advice would you give if upper management has no respect for Agile? Gee, I don't know. That's pretty tough. I think part of the problem there is, what does Agile mean to them? I think Agile, and many executives that haven't been exposed to it, they believe it's a slipshod method, cowboy coding, no documentation, cut the corners, get it out there fast. So that might be what they're unhappy with. So I would say a good first step is figure out what does Agile mean to them. And I mean, these are smart people. What are they pushing back against? exactly, and see if you can't give them some education on what it is that you mean by Agile. And actually, one of the things that I found is very effective is don't use the word Agile. Talk about continuous integration. Talk about tools like Jira. Talk about backlogs. Talk about things that you think are going to make sense to them, whether you call it Agile or not. Yep.
Hi, over at this side. If your products don't correlate, should you still sync up on regular intervals?
I'm sorry, where's the...
Your products. Hi.
Oh, if your products don't sync up?
Yeah.
If your products are unrelated?
Yeah.
That's up to you. So that example I was giving for synchronization is really if you have, you would typically have, more than 9 people for a program, so you've got multiple teams, something like that.
Yeah.
There can still be benefits as far as releasing, but that's really up to you.
Okay.
So I work with a little bit more conservative industry, and what I wanted to ask you, of course, the co-located team and all that is the way to do these things. But from your experience, what kind of efficiency multipliers or inefficiency multipliers, I should say, do you get when you have teams all over the world? I have some team members, in India, some in China, some in Germany. And to execute this, of course, it's not the greatest thing, but it does sort of work. But what would...
Okay. So summary of your question, I think, is how does this Agile thing work if I have distributed teams? Okay, and co-location is great. So actually, this is something that recently occurred to me, is co-location has 2 parts, one that's more important than the other. So how many teams can you be co-located on? 1, exactly 1, right? So that's part of the thing that's hidden in co-location is the idea of being on 1 team. So if you create an environment where whether you're globally distributed or not, those people on the teams are on 1 team, you're going to get a lot of the benefit of co-location. You won't get the face-to-face, right, and the high bandwidth. But one of the reasons that we do things like distributed development and silos and all these things that we've done in the old world was they made sense for Taylorism, efficiency. You use the word efficiency. I would say Agile's not about efficiency. We've gotten all the blood out of that stone over the last 30 years. There's no more efficiency to be gained. And I would not promise you efficiency gains from Agile. What I would promise you is getting something that's valuable to the market faster that people will pay for, so you'll make more money, not so much efficiency. One other guideline there is one company that I worked with took 5 years to slowly migrate to having individually co-located teams. So they had 80 teams across the world. Each one, as a team, was co-located, but not necessarily all teams in the same location. And very often, you mentioned India, so that may be employees or through contract. A lot more organizations are providing whole cross-functional co-located Agile teams as a service as well. And a number of larger organizations that I'm working with are demanding that their partners and vendors switch. Right, so that's something that'll take time. Okay, so I think we have probably time for 1 or 2 more. 2 more.
Hello. I was wondering whether you have any successful implementation of SAFe using Atlassian products like Jira, Jira Agile. Because what we're finding is there are limitations in the tools. I was wondering whether you have an example.
Okay, so there's a couple of questions wrapped up in that. Any successful SAFe implementations, and then how did tooling impact that? So I would say tooling is important for anything where you have a team that is not working only in one location, right? So if I'm homesick and I want to do something, I can't see the card wall. That makes life difficult. So tooling is always fantastic. I think Scaled Agile is something that has been out there for a number of years. I think actually 2008, something like that, a long time. People just started hearing about it last year, and I think that's because it's not so much that SAFe is popular, it's that folks are realizing, wow, I've got a whole bunch of teams, and I'm running up against a wall here for some reason. Maybe we need to do something at the organizational level, and Scaled Agile, until recently, has been one of the very few ways that you could do that. As far as successful Scaled Agile, if you ask me the question, how many successful Scrum teams have I seen out there? I think that's a similar question. And a lot of people are doing Scrum, but not everybody is successful with it. So I think people are starting to do scaled Agile, and not everybody is successful with it. But I don't think you can be unsuccessful at SAFe. I mean, I don't think you can be unsuccessful at Agile, period. Right? You can be unsuccessful at doing the whole thing, but you can be successful at having a backlog. You can be successful at having a cross-functional team. Right? You can do these things individually and have them build up so you get that big benefit that I was talking about earlier. So a lot of what I see is people are doing the Agile release train and that's it. People are doing the portfolio, Kanban portfolio management and that's it. People are synchronizing, oh, that's the release train. People are doing pieces of it and trying to figure out what do I do next. Right? Because it's like any big thing, to implement all of that takes time. So, but I would say that I have seen a lot of, not whole success, but a lot of success with people using scaled Agile. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Damon. That was a great talk. So.